What is going on, DualShocker Nation? DualShocker Gang. You know what's up. It's me, Peter Hunt-Spitek, video producer at DualShockers.com, joined today by another video producer from DualShockers.com, Christian Macias. Christian, how are we doing?
I am sad to report video games are back? Question mark?
Sad to report? It's breaking my heart. It's breaking my heart. And for the first time on the rundown, joining us as well is managing editor of DualShockers.com, Sam Woods. Sam, you doing good?
I'm so tired.
Yeah,
I'm so tired. But yeah, I'm good. I think Christian's onto something when he said video games are back.
Video games are back in a major way, and my name is Peter. I'm here to say that the three of us just got back from Summer Game Fest in beautiful, sunny, although it was a little cloudy when we were there, Los Angeles, California. The three of us got to see the best and biggest that the show floor had, and we want to talk with you all to sort of share the best stuff that we saw and give you just a quick little rundown, if you catch my drift, about what you can expect from the future of gaming. It seems like the next 6 to 18 months, these games are probably all going to be coming out within. So I think what's great about Summer Game Fest is that it gives people just a look into just a bite-sized look at what's to come, as opposed to some of the more bigger things that are 4 or 5 years out still. So the first thing I want to talk about is Star Wars Outlaws. Christian and I went to the Ubisoft sort of preview event for this. The two of us got some hands-on time with it. Christian, you wrote up the preview that's going to be going live on DualShockers.com that can be checked out on the website. I want to know generally what your initial impressions of this game was.
Yeah, much like you, it's a pretty in-depth preview. You'll see it go live on the site later. I had almost no expectations for this game, and this is the only sort of positive that I had before was that Massive Entertainment makes very competent shooters with the Division series. I knew they could make a competent game, but how much Ubisoft was going to be in the formula of Star Wars Outlaws, that was a big question mark for me. And if I'm being frank, one of the reasons why I wasn't super stoked about what Outlaws could look like. Safe to say, we spent an hour with the game, you and I. By the time I was done, I was like, yep, immediately sold. Could not believe how little of the Ubisoft formula I saw and felt during the demo. I was so pleasantly surprised at some of the systems the game is introducing to immerse you into what they're calling the scoundrel gameplay, whether it be going into a city and gambling and having somebody notice that you won some money, and suddenly emerging gameplay starts a small side quest that I have to follow up later, or lock picking in a syndicate hideout where I'm having to look over my shoulder in real time, left and right, to make sure no guard is sneaking up on me. And during my playtime, somebody did, and suddenly I had to quickly exit out of my menu and start fighting, and now I'm in this huge shootout, and this is happening in a Star Wars open world. I really liked my time. I understand some of the critiques that are floating out there. The game is a little bit derivative of action-adventure games of the past, a la Uncharted, of course, but I do think some of the things that they've introduced outshine some of the kind of generic mechanics that maybe hold it back a little bit when in the moment-to-moment gameplay. I liked it. Yeah,
I could not believe, like you, I had just no expectations for this thing. I don't know. I think we had a moment where I think we were talking to each other and was like, are you a Star Wars fan? And we both kind of had this moment well, of course, but, I think everyone who's big into Star Wars has sort of a complicated relationship with it. And so this to me and all the trailers sort of seemed like it was playing into the things that I don't love about Star Wars nowadays. Just remember Greedo, remember Jabba, and that to me does nothing. But when we actually sat down with it, like you said, I was so pleasantly surprised about sort of how refreshing it was in terms of it, at least, in the hour that we spent with it. It's a 30 to 50 hour game for depending on how much you actually want to see. It could certainly be a little bit more remembery. But from what I saw, I think that if it were, that might be something that they want to play up in the preview, just to appeal to Star Wars fans. You know what I mean? but it really didn't do that at all. And I also was pretty impressed, and it jumped up from being something that I was probably actively not going to play to like now I kind of have my eyes on it. But so you walked away completely positive on it?
Yeah, I don't think I have any sort of major fault with the game other than like, again, some of the moment-to-moment gameplay feel like I'm talking specifically like the platforming, the cover shooting. It's not as like I would say like polished as like, of course, like an Uncharted 4. Obviously, it's like a first-party title. This is like a third-party game. In that way, it can feel a little bit stiff. Granted, this is like a development build. Like they're still, a little ways out from, full release. So they can tweak that, of course. But like that wasn't my only negative. Like I again, it's the ways that they're trying to immerse you into this like scoundrel gameplay world of interacting within the larger Star Wars universe, which sounds like a talking point, and it kind of is. I'll acquiesce there. But like it felt real and it felt fun when I was actually in it in ways that like, again, didn't feel like the Ubisoft games that I'm familiar with and usually sort of let me down.
Sure. Sam, you're not a Star Wars fan. That's why I think we went. Does hearing that this game is good, like, and that people are enjoying it from like other previews you've seen and stuff like that, does this interest you at all, or not? Not really, just because it's Star Wars and Star Wars kind of not really for you.
I don't necessarily think the fact that Star Wars puts me off. I think there's just other stuff I would rather play.
Sure.
Than this game. I think it sounds interesting, but there's video games, man. There's too many of them.
100%. Something that you did play, though, that we all got a chance to go hands-on with, was Phantom Blade Zero. So basically, to be clear, we got like a 10-minute demo presentation of this game where we each got to sit down with it and play through like a quick tutorial and then sort of a mob fight and then two sort of larger bosses in the game. Sam, what did you think of this? Because you ended up writing the preview also on DualShockers.com for Phantom Blade Zero.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think in my preview I talk about how parrying is one of the core mechanics of the game, and I'm generally not very good at parrying, but this game did a good job at making me feel like I could parry. I think the bosses were varied, they were fun. I think the demo time could have been longer if I'm kind of being picky. I would have liked to have seen what I'm doing between the boss fights.
Yeah.
Like that's still a little bit unclear to me, but in terms of the feel, the action, it's a lot of fun.
I think one thing that sort of everyone who I talked to about the game sort of walked away with, and it's sort of mirrored in what you said. Obviously, like you wanted to see more because it's again that question of what is happening between fights. Like what are you doing when you're not like actively engaged in combat? But the one through line with every single person I talked to was like, as soon as the demo was over, I wanted more. And I think that's exactly what you want out of a demo. Cristian, I know you felt that same way, right? Like you blasted through that thing in like 9 minutes or something like that, right?
9 minutes, 26 seconds. 3 deaths, so suck
Mr.
it.
Speed run over here. Yeah, I
Peter and Sam.
100% got just demolished by that final boss.
Yeah. I loved it. This is interesting because during your time with the demo, I got to talk with the developer a bit more and kind of dissect sort of where the team was thinking with the systems with the stamina meter and kind of like the design of the world. I don't know how much of that I can share per se, but one thing they did make clear is that the minute-to-minute like gameplay, they didn't want it to just be Sekiro, and this is something that I think Sam highlighted in his preview as well, is that it is combo focused. And if I have one kind of fault, and this is kind of a preference thing, is that I'm not so good with combos. Sure, we can button mash our way through, but I think the stylish flutter that this game has can make it a little bit difficult, at least with the current build, to really feel when I'm supposed to hit the next button to continue said combo.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a struggle there with the mobs. Once I got into the boss, I sort of settled. But yeah, I think the marriage between that combo-focused gameplay, but then having that like parry and then the perfect dodge mechanic felt really good when I was actually in it with the gameplay. And then having, we just came off of Stellar Blade. That game has like the little flash on screen, and that that will prompt you visually to press the corresponding button on the controller to perform either that parry or that dodge. And it felt good here. It felt really good, especially when I'm going up with those like higher difficulty bosses.
I just got, I don't know, a month ago at this point, got through Stellar Blade, and it's a fine enough game, and like the combat in that game works just fine. But it didn't have maybe the challenge in it that I was sort of maybe expecting and associating with like sort of the mechanics that go into the genre. And this game seems to be a nice marriage of sort of the challenge with also the sort of more approachability of not being so hardcore. At least that's what it seems like to me. But yeah, so Phantom Blade Zero, we were all pretty hot on. Everyone I talked to, again, said, I want more. So I think that one is going to be a pretty hotly anticipated game. Something that I wasn't quite as hot on, going back to our Ubisoft sort of preview, was Assassin's Creed Shadows. So Christian and I got to see about a 30-minute hands-off preview of the game where a Ubisoft, I don't know if they were developer or PR or what, but a Ubisoft representative sat down and played about 30 minutes of the game for us. And my preview went up on the site this morning, and you know, I'm a little disappointed. Ubisoft had been talking a lot since they revealed Assassin's Creed Shadows with its like flashy, sleek CGI trailer about how like this game was going to be a sort of a departure from like more of the rigid structure of Assassin's Creed stuff that they've gotten into sort of in the post Origins era. But it's just not. It's sort of the same thing, different story, you know. It seems like they were trying to appeal to fans of the older Assassin's Creed game and the newer ones by giving you the split protagonists with Naue and Yasuke. Naue being a more like stealthy shinobi type like assassin character, and then Yasuke is a much more like front on like brute force like hack and slash sword combat character like we've seen with Eivor and Cassandra and I'm forgetting the names. Basim. No, Basim is the guy from Mirage. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is like they're trying to like appeal to the two sort of like eras of Assassin's Creed, but I don't know. In my opinion, it just didn't really look like it was departing enough and like leaning into those things that they were saying was going to make it in like so much more different. I don't know, Christian. What did you think?
This one's tricky.
Yeah.
If I had expectations for Ubisoft, it's funny. I mentioned having zero expectations for Outlaws. I sort of had some expectations for AC Shadows because I think the setup of the two protagonists I thought was interesting, and like having the return to formula with Naue, but also having Yasuke be like the first like historical figure running in an Assassin's Creed game is huge, and having those two different playstyles I think set up expectations for, and also set in Japan, was like this has the potential to be pretty cool, and I left very much underwhelmed, and it's hard to pinpoint that, but I think in discussions with you and then reading your preview, I think it's the ways like you can see behind the veil of Ubisoft's like engine working in real time with our build. Just there were cracks everywhere, and specifically I think with the ways that like the person playing the game would interact with the enemies on screen. Just none of it was fitting in a way that I would expect out of a like huge tentpole game coming from Ubisoft. One that is like 4 years into our next gen consoles. This just looked and ran like a game that is not of this era, in my opinion.
And I think too, obviously it's worth pointing out, like this is a development build. This is not a finished product. But something I pointed out in my preview is like, yeah, but those sorts of problems are in Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Odyssey and Origins. So it's not something that I'm expecting to be fixed. But if you're looking for some more, again, extended thoughts, DualShockers.com. Sam, you got a chance to see Marvel Rivals. Christian and I didn't get a chance to take a look at this. You are not someone who loves sort of hero shooters. You're not an Overwatch fan or anything like that. How did Marvel Rivals grab you? Because it seems like it's going to be like the big Overwatch competitor of, I mean, maybe the first one that seems like it's going to have like a really big impact. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a weird kind of demo environment. Mm-hmm. The person playing the game in front of me was just like hauled off their desk mid game, and I was like thrown straight into combat in the middle of a game. like picking up with their character. They were playing as Hulk. I didn't know what the objectives were, what my skills, abilities were, what the buttons were. So immediately I was kind of like, yeah, this isn't great. So then that round kind of finished. It gave me a chance to reassess. I flipped through some other characters. I played as Loki, Hela, Storm, a few other Marvel characters, and none of them were hitting for me. And I was just getting destroyed. I think I finished that game like 1 or 2 kills for 17 deaths.
Jeez, okay.
And so I was getting cooler by the minute. But then I saw that they had Punisher, who's just like a dude with a gun.
Guy with a gun, easy. It's a shooter.
And I've played shooters before.
Yeah.
And so then I started to tear it up with Punisher a little bit. I was kind of, one of his skills is to put down a turret, and so I was just like absolutely nailing enemies with my turret. He had like a superpower that then just shot off missiles and stuff like that. So I had a lot more fun when I was playing as Punisher. Now Punisher's probably the easiest character to play in the game. Like I don't think I'm going to get much enjoyment out of it. Besides that, but it was fine.
So something that I think is really appealing about Overwatch specifically is that, you know, it's got a huge cast of characters, but each character has like maybe 3 or 4 things that they can do, and that's kind of it. Like the things that each character can do is pretty limited. So it means that they are good for sort of one thing and good at countering one or a handful of different other things. And so it's kind of like just a big game of like rock, paper, scissors, right? But it's got a million different characters. Did you sort of feel that Marvel Rivals was doing something similar where it's like, okay, you know, Loki has 4 abilities, right? And that's it. Or are they a little bit more intricate in terms of what they can do?
Oh no, the first one, they all had 3 or 4 abilities. Every team always had a Groot, because his abilities are seemingly overpowered. He can build a big wall of like trees to defend an objective or guard the teammates. So every team generally had a Groot and a Spider-Man, and then it was a mixture of like 3 other characters. But yeah, I can see that Overwatch style of gameplay, that rock paper scissors style, kind of fitting into Marvel Rivals.
Well, what I think is so great though about games like this, you know, you mentioned like just hopping into the game and saying like, okay, guy with the gun, I got that, I can do that, and like, in my opinion, something that's great about Overwatch is there's a role for everyone, sort of depending on what sort of games you like to play. It reminds me a little bit of even like Team Fortress 2. There's a joke, I don't remember who said it, but it's like, you know, there's a gameplay style for everyone. Even people who like point and click adventures can play as the sniper, where the only puzzle is use gun on man. So like I think that, you know, even though that might have been the only character you gravitated towards, I think that everyone is going to sort of have a different experience walking away from that game based on the types of games they like and the sorts of systems that they're used to and stuff like that. So hearing that doesn't necessarily like discourage me. In fact, it makes me sort of interested in this game even more. Something that is completely not my speed that I know is your speed though is Monster Hunter. What is the subtitle on this one? Remind me.
Wilds.
Okay, I was gonna say Worlds, but Monster Hunter World was like the last one, right, or something like that.
Yeah, Monster Hunter World was the one before Rise was the last one, but now we've got 2 MHW acronyms, which makes things annoying.
Perfect. But you got a chance to see it. Did you get to play it, or was it a hands-off sort of preview?
Hands-off, 20 to 30 minute preview by the Capcom game. I'm excited for this one. I'm really excited. It takes the best parts of Monster Hunter, the monster hunting, the kind of teaming up, all the good stuff, and it does away with a lot of the stuff that kind of slows the game down. So you say you're not a Monster Hunter guy, so the general flow is you're in the hub, you accept a quest on the quest board, you go somewhere to eat to get some stats, you might go to somewhere to craft some weapons, then you might go to your base to change your weapons, and so in between fights you've got this big slowdown period. Monster Hunter Wilds kind of does away with that. You don't need to go to a quest board. You can just head straight out into the open world and start hunting monsters. You can set up a temporary camp in the world. There you can eat. You can change your weapons. You can do a lot of the stuff you would do at the game's base camp. The world, or the kind of area that we got shown, they said was like 2 times bigger than a typical Monster Hunter level. So there's loads of exploration to be had, and you're not limited by like going back and forward. So typically previous Monster Hunter games, you would beat the monster, you would have a 60-second countdown to finish up what you're doing, like carve the monster parts off it or farm some materials, and then you'd be transported back. In this one, that doesn't happen. So you kill the monster, you're free to then go and hunt another monster.
Sure. So I think that something about Monster Hunter, it's a series that I think is a little bit difficult to parse for people who haven't been in it for a long time. You know what I mean? Does this one seem like it might be a good place to start for people who haven't gotten into the series previously, or is this sort of like, I know you self-identify as a Monster Hunter freak. Is this more for the freaks out there?
See, I jumped in, like, my first Monster Hunter game was World, so I'm not like a long-term not a long-term sicko. Like, I jumped in for the first time at World. So I agree they're difficult to get to grips with, and like there is a real time investment to understanding the loop and the Monster Hunter gameplay. And boiled down, it is really simple. You go out, you kill monsters, you build better gear, you go out and fight bigger monster, you build better gear from that, and it's just rinse and repeat. So like I feel like this is a good of an opportunity for anybody to jump in.
Sure.
I think it's probably going to be a bit easier for people because there's not that slowdown between like killing the monster, going back to camp, having to spend 20 minutes at camp doing miscellaneous chores and then heading back out. So like it's going to be more approachable in that aspect, but I still think if you've never played a Monster Hunter game, there's going to be this adjustment period of like, okay, I'm really going to spend 40 minutes just fighting one monster to farm 5 or 6 different parts that might help me make some new armor, but I might need to fight it for another 40 minutes to get the parts I need. Like it's a slow, they're slow ass games, but they're hella fun as hell.
Sure. Sort of speaking of slower, though, Cristian, we got a chance to see Fear the Spotlight. Now, Sam was the one sort of playing through it, but you and I were sort of on the couch next to him. Fear the Spotlight is the first game coming from Blumhouse Games, which is the new game publishing house by Blumhouse, who they're a film distribution company. They're sort of known for their model of taking smaller creators, giving them a decent budget. So modest budget, but decent for, the size of the creator usually, and allowing them to make some sort of horror movie. Highlights from Blumhouse would be things like Paranormal Activity, Get Out, Megan from I think like last year or something like that. What is your take on bringing that model to video games, and do you think that it's working with Fear the Spotlight?
I think it works. I think for so long, we've seen the tweets in the industry that we want smaller games with worse graphics that, cost less to make and, shorter development time. And I think that's how one step to how you sustain a healthy industry. But also, it is important to get different types of games and different types of creators in the industry, and the more we bolster said voices and said unique experiences, I think as well you also take steps towards helping sustain a healthy industry. So I think that approach is awesome. I think it's working for movies. Horror is such a has a great zeitgeist, I think, right now, especially in the TV and movie space. The same thing could be said about video games with maybe the, help me out here, survival horror sort of genre. but more like horror outside of that survival horror genre per se is maybe less tapped currently. I think what the Blumhouse publishing house is doing, I think is going to help usher more interesting titles, smaller titles, to wider audiences in a way that really excites me.
Yeah. So Fear the Spotlight is the first game coming out of Blumhouse, or being published by Blumhouse rather. It was coming later this year. What did you think? I mean, it's a husband and wife team, so obviously very small team, kind of a smaller scope as a result of that. As a fan of survival horror and horror in general, did this resonate with you? What do you think?
Let me tell you, as someone who is constantly like watching and ingesting both PS1 and PS2 style like demake like indie games already, who has some of them wishlisted on Steam for so long. I saw this and like my ears perked up so huge, and then I got to see Sam play it, and hearing that you can turn up the CRT filter on that, I was like, absolutely crank that bad boy. Let me like lose myself in the grain of this TV screen. But then the way they use that to kind of, maybe Sam can speak about this more, it seems like elevate a teen drama and kind of meditate on like teen girl angst and anxiety. The ways they use that for like, Sam, I think you can talk about this with the the use of the inhaler and the lungs on screen, but it, very reminiscent of things like Resident Evil or Silent Hill. This was speaking my language, man, in ways I was not expecting.
Sure. Sam did it. Me too. Like I'm so on board with this. I'm excited to check it out when it comes out later this year. The story of its development is also just interesting with everyone who's sort of involved and Blumhouse and all that. Sam, you were like hands on with it. Did it? I mean, like to say like, did it play as good as it looked? Is kind of like maybe not the way to go about it, because it's like a third person sort of like adventure game, so it doesn't need like the most cutting edge like mechanics and stuff like that. But was it selling itself to you in the same way?
Yeah, I'm in. I've just kind of over the last few years started to enter my horror game era. So like horror games were never something I messed with, but I started to play like the Resident Evil remakes and the Dead Space remake and stuff like that. So I'm now like fully in on horror games, and this is a lot of fun. Like Cristian said, it does a lot of interesting things, like the lungs. You use an inhaler to heal yourself because you get anxious and stressed with what's going on, so that's how you calm yourself down. That's the healing process. I think the lighting is done really well, given that it is this kind of grainy PS1 looking game. I think the way the lighting works is really good. The way the character models look, I think are great. So I'm super in on this one. Like Cristian said, give me more smaller experiences and I'm happy.
Sure. And I think that's what we can expect to come with the Blumhouse stuff too. So Fear the Spotlight, I'm looking forward to that when it comes out later this year. So Sam, you also got to see, Cristian and I didn't get to catch it, but you got to see a presentation for Dragon Age: The Veilgaurd. Did you watch the presentation that they showed, what was it, 2 days ago or the day before, or did you just sort of stick with that one? And what did you see? What stood out to you when you saw it?
So I believe I saw the first hour of gameplay. I saw the full prologue. I believe what they showed the other day
less of that,
was like the first 15 minutes or something of the prologue. I'm kind of in. So it's well documented that I wasn't a big fan of Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
I found the combat in that to be a little frustrating. It slowed the game down too much for me. I totally appreciate that it's probably the best game from last year. It just wasn't for me. I think Dragon Age: The Veilgaurd is gonna rectify a lot of those issues for me. It's a lot more free-flowing combat. It mixes in some like strategy, real-timey stuff. You can pause combat mid-flow to kind of help make your decisions. But it seems like a faster pace. This is going to be really reductive, but like a faster paced version of Baldur's Gate 3.
No, I think I think what you're saying though makes sense, because I know that you are not alone in saying like I loved Baldur's, like I liked the idea of Baldur's Gate 3, but just like having to sit down and you know the more methodical, tactical, turn-based combat stuff just doesn't resonate with everyone, right? Like I can understand that, and I can also understand that like if you can't get on board with that, then you're just not going to have a good time with Baldur's Gate 3, because like that's the whole thing. You know, obviously there's the character stories that are excellent and all that sort of stuff, but I don't, what I'm saying is I don't think you're alone in that. And I think other people have sort of noted as well, saying like, hey, this is great for people who maybe wanted to like that game a little bit more, but didn't. Cristian, I saw you shaking your head. Was that just about not being able to get down with the tactics turn-based stuff?
No, I'm sorry. I got a work email that I glanced over.
I also got a work email that I
yeah.
glanced over at. Yeah. But Dragon Age, I don't think you're alone there though, Sam, in seeing it and getting sort of like excited because of the way that Baldur's Gate sort of passed you by. Now, I did see. I don't remember who it was, but there was an article that went up about like I don't need Dragon Age. I already got everything I need out of Baldur's Gate 3. And someone, I think it was Ash Parrish maybe, quote tweeted and said like, 2 cakes. We've been given 2 cakes. It's okay to have 2 cakes and to enjoy 2 cakes. So what I'm getting at though is I'm glad that you are in on that as someone who wasn't able to get in on Baldur's Gate 3. And for me, someone who got very into Baldur's Gate 3, I'm really excited for this. Also, it's my first Dragon Age game.
Yeah, so I want to touch on that. It's my first Dragon Age game too.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of concern online following the kind of Game Awards trailer of like, oh, it looks like Fortnite, or
sure.
It looks dumb, it doesn't look dark enough. But after watching that first hour or so, it's dark. Like it goes places.
Sure.
The environments are beautiful. There's a really big focus, I guess. It's been in development for 10 years, so Baldur's Gate may or may not have had an impact on this, but there's a huge focus on the party members, their interactions, and their place in the world. So, like, there's nothing to worry about for existing Dragon Age fans.
Yeah. Cristian, you had something to add?
Yeah, can I add? In terms of art style, no, I'm not sure which engine BioWare uses. It is BioWare, correct? Dragon Age?
Yeah, I think they said Frostbite.
Okay. Well, occasionally with art style, sometimes, from what I know about the previous Dragon Age games, is like if this game looked like the other games, there is a chance you kind of start to maybe look sort of maybe not generic is the right word, but like start to look the same as other games in the video game space. Having to shift to a specific art style, I think, one, allows to set an identity, just to stamp that ahead of time in a different direction than what other games are doing, which I think is a good and exciting, I think, for me personally. Mm-hmm. But also, I don't know, think about the ways that maybe like changes development or allows them to go kind of crazy with art direction later on. With I didn't get to see it, but like some of the stuff that I can only assume is in what he saw. Like, it is not all about graphics and fidelity. Sometimes it is about what you do with the art style that matters more, and that excites
100%.
me.
I think people get so like caught up on the fact of like, okay, well this game looked photorealistic and this one is like doing something with an art style, and it's like, yeah, that's good. like 2 cakes, guys. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm with you there, Cristian, and I don't get it. If a game is engaging and interesting and has either something to say or something that I like mesh with like mechanically or with characters or whatever, I don't care what it looks like. I'm playing through 1000 Resist right now. That game is ugly as hell, but it's got great art direction, and it's intentional. And I think like, if you're going to turn your nose up at like, oh, well, it doesn't look, photorealistic, or, oh, it looks like this on the Switch, like, well, then I think you're going to miss out on some of the best games that come out every year. You know what I mean? Speaking of possibly some of the best games coming out later this year, I think we're going to end things here talking about Metaphor ReFantazio, or is it ReFantazio? I don't know sort of how that last word gets pronounced, but I know that this game looks sick. Sam, you were the one who sat down and played this. Christian and I were sort of sitting next to you on the couch. I know you are a big Persona fan through and through. Where does Metaphor rank for you in terms of like interest in this from these developers? Like, are you interested just because it's Persona by the Persona team, or did this preview sort of get you even more into what's going on with this thing?
The initial sell for me was it's a new game by the Persona guys, so like I'm in. But having played it, like I think it has the chance to surpass what Persona's doing in a lot of aspects.
Can you speak to that? Like what specifically, like where do you see the limitations of Persona sort of being exceeded with this one?
The battle system is interesting. It takes things kind of a level further than what Persona does. There's new enemy designs for what feels like the first time in forever from this team.
Not just the pixie and the slime and all that.
Yeah, it's a whole different world, a whole different setting. The art style just blows my mind. Like the Persona games look cool as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, this watercolor pastel-y situation it has going on just looks phenomenal. Didn't get to do much of the kind of day-to-day stuff like you have in Persona, which is kind of going to be there in some aspect, but I don't know. It's the best demo I've ever played at an event.
Sure. Christian, I remember when we were sitting next to Sam, you being so impressed with the menus and UIs and stuff like that. Are you? Remind me, I don't think you've played much Persona. Is that right?
I've played 2 Persona games, did not beat either. Not because they didn't jive with me, but because I liked them
games.
so. They're big games, and I ended up moving on for other work-related stuff, and I forget, I don't have time to go back. I would like to. I don't have time. Hey, first of all, Persona 5, take your time. I'm still taking my time.
Yeah. No shame there.
If I may, I think I know where you're leading this question is how did I feel just visually engaging with the game as someone who did not get hands-on but was like sitting there watching it. Of course, on the internet, us frequent internet users love to talk our big game about the UI of these Persona games, and of course of Metaphor as well. I think implied in that is the user experience while playing the game, which I think is just as important as the UI itself. The way it feels to be shifting through these menus is really the core, is a big chunk of the core gameplay of all of these games. Based on what I've seen, it looks a step up from the Persona. Like, I am in awe of the way these menus are interacting with the moment-to-moment gameplay experience. I was absolutely floored, in awe, could not wait for October 11th. Somehow.
Can I say, it's funny, I think I'm thinking specifically about Persona 5/Royal and then Persona 3 Reload, which came out earlier this year. Those menus are fantastic. They blow me away, right? And the Metaphor menus kind of make them look bad. You know what I mean? It makes them not bad. Obviously, it doesn't retroactively make them worse, but it looks like that team saw what they had done with their previous work and said, we know how we're going to style on this. We know how we are going to improve this and make this even more kaleidoscopic while, exactly what you're saying, while not sacrificing usability. There's so much going on screen, but it doesn't get in the way of what you, the player, need to do. And I think that's huge, right? Because you can have as many flashy animations as you want, but if they're boring or if they get in the way of what you're trying to do, then it doesn't matter because it's a hindrance, right? And I didn't seem to catch that at all with Metaphor. One other thing that sort of I saw sitting next to you, Sam, in terms of a way that this game seems to sort of take a step up from what Persona is doing on a mechanical level is dealing with lower enemy fights, because basically the game is a mix of active combat and turn-based stuff. And I know that a lot of RPG fans kind of roll their eyes when they hear that, because I think they think of stuff like Final Fantasy 13, which I liked okay in terms of the combat style, but I know that did not mesh well with everyone. But the way that Metaphor is doing it is pretty interesting, because basically if there are enemies that are lower level than you, you can dip into the traditional turn-based combat pretty much at any encounter at any time. But you just have a sword that you can just cut right through them if they are low enough level, which means that like if you wanted to do specific things, grind specific way, with the turn-based stuff, you can do it, or you can just sort of skip them. Not skip them entirely, because there's still some skill to it, and you still do get that experience points and whatnot. But like you're able to sort of choose how you are handling these lower level encounters, which means that they're not just going to sort of wear on you and just take up more time than you want to spend on them, which is just something that I think is a great workaround for sort of things that I think people have been complained about Persona in the past, of just like, okay, it gets grindy, right? In Mementos, or in what's the name of the place in Tartarus, Persona 3? You know, like those spots are grindy, but I think this is a way at sidestepping that. So I hope that in the final release it does that. So I think that gets to the end of our list here of games. Any sort of final thoughts on the quality of the stuff that was shown off this year, Sam and Christian? I'll throw it to you first, Sam.
Yeah, I think it was an excellent year. Lots to be excited about. I also got to play Black Myth Wukong.
Yep.
Can't share my thoughts on that, so keep an eye on DualShockers.com on Sunday. But overall, yeah, really good year.
Yeah, Christian, same thoughts or?
Absolutely same thoughts. Like I said at the beginning, is gaming back? It might be bigger and better than ever. I don't know. We'll see.
Sure. Yeah, I
great show floor this year. I thought fantastic.
I hated it. It was terrible. I'm kidding. I don't know. Like, you know, people like to say, oh, it's kind of a light year, kind of a lull year. And I'm like, what are you guys playing? Because I don't have enough time to play all the games that are coming out. And I think seeing everything at SGF this year just cemented that the rest of this year is going to be pretty good. And then 2025 also has a lot of great stuff to look forward to. So that's, I think, where we'll call it. Thank you so much for watching, listening, however you're consuming this. If you are interested in more content like this, go ahead and like and subscribe to DualShockers, and make sure you check out those previews, because we go in a lot more depth on the games that we played, and more games that we didn't even mention here on DualShockers.com. All right, DualShocker Nation. I'm going to say it until it sticks, I think. We will catch you in the next one. Like, comment, subscribe, later.
Bye-bye.